Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I never imagined a single dress could unravel everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Emily had always had a way of lighting up a room, the kind of presence that drew people in, effortless and warm. But that evening, when she left for a friend's wedding wearing a deep red dress, I felt an unfamiliar weight pressing down on my chest. It wasn't jealousy in the childish sense, and it wasn't fear. It was a premonition, the kind that settles in quietly, insistent and stubborn, whispering that something was about to break. I remember standing in the hallway, arms crossed, trying to ignore the reflection of her in the mirror as she adjusted the straps, her laughter echoing from the bedroom. "You look stunning," I said, forcing calm into my voice. But remember what I said. My tone didn't waver. If you leave in that dress, don't bother coming back. I didn't want to say it, not really, but the words were there before I could stop them, heavy and final. Emily tilted her head, a playful smirk dancing across her lips. "You're dramatic," she teased, smoothing a stray strand of hair. But I could see the flicker of something else in her eyes. Defiance, maybe, or curiosity. Either way, she walked past me, grabbed her clutch, and left. The click of the front door resonated like a gunshot. I tried to distract myself, telling myself it was just a wedding, just an evening. I brewed a cup of coffee, stared at the steam curling from the mug, and watched the clock with a patience I didn't have. Every minute stretched longer than the last. Memories of our early years surfaced unbidden. Friday night movies in our tiny apartment, spontaneous road trips, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder and laugh at my dumb jokes. Those were the moments I clung to now, as if remembering them could tether me to what was still left. The text came an hour later. A simple line, "Having fun. We'll be late." I put the phone down and stared at the blank wall, pretending it didn't matter. But my chest tightened, every muscle wound with anticipation I didn't want to feel. Something about that brevity, the lack of warmth or care, sliced through me. I tried to read too much into it, replaying her gestures, the way she lingered by the door before stepping out. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. Deep down, I knew she had stepped into a different world that night, one where I didn't exist. Hours passed. I kept glancing at my phone, willing for another message, anything that would tell me she was thinking of me. The silence was suffocating. Around midnight, I found myself unable to sleep, pacing the living room in the dim light. Every car that passed outside made me jump, every distant laugh from the neighborhood piercing my nerves. I knew weddings were chaotic, full of people and music and dancing. Yet I couldn't shake the certainty that this was different. Something had shifted the moment she stepped out in that dress. When she finally walked through the door, it wasn't the triumphant return I half hoped for. The laughter, the spark, the warmth, they were gone. Emily's eyes didn't meet mine. Her smile, when it appeared, was polite, measured, almost cautious. "The wedding was fine," she said, voice neutral, almost rehearsed. She dropped her clutch on the counter and flopped onto the couch, scrolling through her phone as if the last few hours hadn't happened at all. "Fine," I echoed, a tremor in my voice. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to remain calm. That premonition, that gnawing feeling, had not been wrong. Something had happened, something I couldn't yet name. I tried to speak, tried to break the tension, but every attempt seemed to fall flat. "Did you dance?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. She shrugged without looking up. "A little. Nothing special." My stomach twisted. It wasn't the dancing or the party. It was her distance, the invisible wall I hadn't noticed before. I remember my warning, the one I had muttered with a mix of fear and defiance. "If you leave in that dress, don't bother coming back." I felt the words echoing between us now, heavier than ever. Sleep came fitfully, shadows of doubt filling every corner of my mind. I couldn't stop replaying the evening. Her laugh, the way she held her glass, the strangers who complimented her dress. My imagination was relentless, painting scenes I didn't want to see but couldn't avoid. By morning, I knew something fundamental had changed. The warmth and trust we had shared for over a decade had cracked, and I was staring into the abyss of uncertainty. Breakfast was silent. Emily moved through the kitchen with mechanical efficiency, coffee in hand, her eyes fixed on the table. I kept mine on her, searching for a trace of the woman I married, but it wasn't there. "You're quiet," she said finally, a hint of irritation creeping into her tone. I didn't answer. The words I had spoken last night felt prophetic now, and I realized I had two choices: ignore the shift and hope it was temporary, or confront it before it swallowed us both. My decision was made with quiet resolve. This wasn't about anger. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. By the time she left for work, I had filed the paperwork. Divorce. The weight of the decision settled on me, heavy but strangely liberating. I didn't revel in it, didn't feel a rush of vindication. Instead, I felt awake, alive, aware for the first time in years. That night, alone in a house that once felt like ours, I understood something fundamental. Love can die quietly, in small shifts and silences, long before anyone notices. And sometimes, the bravest act is recognizing when it is already gone. The next morning, the house felt like a museum of memories. Every object taunted me with fragments of what we once had. I walked past the framed photos on the walls, our smiles frozen in happier times, and felt a cold clarity settle over me. Filing for divorce hadn't brought chaos, at least not yet. It had brought awareness. The quiet house amplified every heartbeat, every thought. And as the days stretched on, I realized that Emily's absence wasn't just physical. It seeped into the very air we once shared. By midday, the calls began. Family members and friends, cautiously curious, checked in, trying to gauge my state. I answered with measured honesty, careful not to spill more than necessary. Each call reminded me of the life we had built together and how effortlessly it could unravel. There was no dramatic shouting match, no shattered plates or thrown possessions. The end had come silently, like a thief in the night, leaving only traces behind. And yet, despite the calm surface, the tension simmered just beneath, ready to boil over the moment she returned. That evening, Emily came home. I could hear the car pull into the driveway, the familiar crunch of tires over gravel. But when she stepped through the door, it wasn't with apology or explanation. It was with defiance. Her expression was composed, controlled, but her eyes betrayed a storm I wasn't prepared for. She clutched her handbag tightly, like a shield, as if bracing for some inevitable confrontation. I remained seated at the dining table, hands folded, waiting, my chest steady despite the turmoil that threatened to rise. "I saw the papers," she said flatly, placing her bag on the counter. "You actually filed." Her tone was not accusatory, more stunned, almost as if she couldn't comprehend the reality. "I thought you were bluffing." I met her gaze, unflinching. "I wasn't," I said simply, "and it wasn't a bluff. It's a clarity I should have had years ago." There was a pause, a charged silence hanging between us, dense and suffocating. I could see her processing, recalculating, trying to find a foothold in the shifting landscape of our marriage. Emily took a step closer, hesitating, then stopped. I didn't think it would come to this," she admitted, her voice softening, the first crack in her armor. I stayed silent. My mind raced with memories. Our first apartment, laughter spilling into the night, the promises whispered in the dark. But those years, precious as they were, didn't outweigh the years of neglect, the subtle erosion of love that had gone unnoticed until now. "I loved you," she said finally, almost as if testing the words on her tongue. "I still do." The confession hung in the air like a fragile crystal, beautiful yet breakable. I didn't respond immediately. Love was a memory now, not a promise. I thought of every night she had spent distant, every touch I had longed for, every moment I felt unseen. The love she professed couldn't erase that. Instead, I spoke with calm conviction. "I know." My voice was steady, unwavering. "But sometimes love isn't enough. We lost ourselves long before tonight. I've waited for too long for something that wasn't coming back." The words landed like stones, heavy, unavoidable. She flinched, and I realized that the weight of truth is heavier than any argument, heavier than any betrayal. The conversation shifted to logistics, division of assets, living arrangements, schedules. For the first time, we discussed things not with emotion, but with precision. It was strange, clinical almost, yet freeing. The chaos I had anticipated never materialized. There were no ultimatums, no threats, no dramatic confrontations. Just clarity and finality. Emily seemed stunned by the lack of emotion on my part. She had expected drama, tears, perhaps even rage. What she got was certainty. As the night deepened, she prepared to leave. Her movements were deliberate, careful, as if every gesture carried weight. I didn't mean for this, she murmured. I nodded once, silently acknowledging the sentiment without inviting further discussion. When she stepped into her car, the headlights catching her silhouette one last time, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The house no longer felt like a museum of memories, but a space reclaimed, neutral, and mine. Alone, I walked to the living room window, looking out at the quiet street. The premonition I had felt days ago had been correct. The dress, the wedding, the night itself had revealed the cracks that had been there all along. And while the knowledge had been painful, the clarity it brought was invaluable. I realized that endings aren't always loud and chaotic. Sometimes they're quiet, deliberate, almost invisible to the world, yet devastatingly transformative to those living through them. By the time the house fell silent again, I had made peace with the past. I understood that love can fade, that trust can erode, and that sometimes walking away is not defeat, but the bravest act of all. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cheer. I simply exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. And in that quiet, I knew something vital. I had survived the unraveling, and in doing so, I reclaimed not just my home, but myself. The dress was never just fabric. It had been the catalyst, the sign, the undeniable proof that some chapters end not with noise, but with the subtle, irrevocable truth. And I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, unbound, awake, and wholly aware.